this works. Okay, let me start my presentation in the year 1882. I wish I could show you a video like Dan did, but honestly I didn't find a TV station who wanted to produce such a nice video, so I had to find a different way myself, which is a little cheaper. Anyway, in the year 1882, a man named Henry de Bosnis came to Essex County in the state of New York. This man was a stranger, nobody knew him. He immediately started courting a woman. The name of the woman was Elizabeth Wells, and after only a few weeks, the two married. But the marriage didn't last very long, because after only a few months, Elizabeth was found dead. She was stabbed and shot, so obviously she was murdered, and of course the prime suspect was her new husband. He was immediately arrested and put into jail, and while in jail he started writing poems, drawing letters. He obviously was a good drawing pictures, he was a good painter. He wrote texts, poems, and he created a few cryptograms. Some of them are visible here. Then he was put on trial, and on January 20th in 1883 he was condemned to death, and then he was hanged. Well, now there are a few interesting questions about this case. Well, first of all, was de Bosnis guilty at all? Probably he was, but in my view it was not 100% sure, so probably today he would be discharged. Then another question is, did he murder his two first wives too? Because he had two earlier wives and both of them died in a young age. And was de Bosnis his real name? Also an interesting question, because he himself said that he lived on a wrong identity, but he didn't tell what his true identity was. Well, all these questions might be answered if it was possible to decrypt these cryptograms. This is not complete, but I think this is about half of it. So far, not too many experts have looked at these cryptograms, and so far, nobody has managed to find a solution. I wish I could go a little more into detail about this case, but all I want to tell you for now is that we have here an unsolved crime and an unsolved cryptogram. And as some of you know, I write a blog and popular scientific books, and I've made the experience that my readers love these stories. If you have an unsolved crime with an unsolved cryptogram, you can solve a crime from your sofa, at least in theory, and that's what the people love. So I ask myself, how many cases of this kind are there? And so far my collection contains 8 cases, or in the meantime there are even 9. I will tell you at the end of the presentation why. And so I will introduce you these 8 cases, and if you know the solution of any of these cryptograms, I'm sure Dan Olsen will be very interested and he will hire you on the spot. Okay, the number 1 was the de Bosnis case. Let's now look at the second one. This is also not very well known. It happened in Germany. In the year 1985, a man named Günther Stoll suffered from paranoia. So he always believed that somebody wanted to haunt him, somebody wanted to kill him. He complained about that to his wife, and one day he said something like Jokzi, a word, Jokzi, doesn't have any meaning, and wrote it on a piece of paper. And he immediately crossed it out. And guess what happened a few days later? He was found dead. Close to the Autobahn 45 in the western part of Germany. And he was overrun by a car, but not by his own car. He was found next to his own car, but this was not the car which overran him. And the police couldn't solve this crime. And now there are a few obvious questions. Well, first of all, who killed Günther Stoll? Might have been a murder, but could also have been an accident with a car that is still unknown. And what does Yogzi mean? It's a really strange word. Of course, it's not necessarily an encryption, it could be anything. As far as the German police says, this word doesn't have a meaning in any language in the world. And there have been many discussions going on in the last 30 years about this word, Yogzi, and so far nobody has come up with a plausible explanation. No convincing explanation, so what we have here is case number 2. It's again an unsolved crime and an unsolved cryptogram. Okay, I know it might be not really a cryptogram because it might be not really an encryption, but who knows? Let's now come to case number 3. Well, you know this one. Dan Olsen also already mentioned it, and in the next talk by Dave we will learn more about it. The Zodiac Killer. In the years 1968 and 69, there was a serial murder in the San Francisco area who killed 5 people. And he sent encrypted messages to newspapers. There were 4 encrypted messages. The first one was solved, and the remaining 3 have remained unsolved until today. So I don't need to talk much about it because we will learn more about it in the next presentation. But again, we have an unsolved crime and an unsolved cryptogram. That's what my readers love. Let's now come to case number 3, also a very well-known one, the Ricky McCormick case. In the year 1989, a man named Ricky McCormick was found dead on a cornfield in Missouri, close to the Missouri Road 367. He was lying face down, pretty close to the street, in an area that was not served by public transportation. And in his pocket, the police found 2 encrypted notes. And about 15 years later, the police went public, or the FBI, I guess, went public with this message, or these 2 messages, and asked the public to help solving these cryptograms, but so far this has not been successful. So the crime hasn't been solved yet, and these cryptograms haven't been solved yet. So again, we have here an unsolved crime and an unsolved cryptogram and a well-known case, so I won't talk too much about it. Let's now get to case number 5. This is a very interesting one, quite well known in Australia, not that much in the USA. In the year 1948, in Adelaide, Australia, a man was seen or was lying on a beach, the Somerton beach, and he was seen by several witnesses. He was always lying at the same spot for hours, and on the next morning he was still lying at the same spot and he was found dead. So the cause of death was not really clear. Could be a poison or could also be a natural death, like an allergic reaction or something like that. He was not shot or stabbed or something like that, but must have been a disease or poisoning. And the most interesting thing about this case is that this man has never been identified. This is how he looked like. In my view, it's a pretty good picture. So this picture was published in virtually every newspaper throughout Australia. And in my view, it should have been possible to identify this man. Somebody must have known him. Unless maybe he wasn't from Australia, maybe he came from another part of the world, spent only a few days in Australia and then was found dead. Something like this must have happened. Well, when the body of this man was examined, there was a small piece of paper was found in a pocket, And this piece of paper belonged to a book. This book was found pretty close to the dead body, and in this book a letter sequence was found on the last page, which you see here. It's the so-called Taman-Shut cryptogram. Taman-Shut, that's what was written on this page of the book. It's, I think, Persian for end. And, well, now the question is, what do these letter sequences mean? Could be some kind of encryption. The most likely explanation is that all these letters are word initials. But so far nobody has come up with a real plausible explanation what kind of words were abbreviated here. Might be a poem, but might also be something, some notes that were taken by somebody who did his profession, went to different houses, each house was a letter, I don't know. Well, but again, we have here an unsolved crime and an unsolved cryptogram. It's absolutely not sure whether this cryptogram will help anything to solve the crime, but at least it's possible in theory. And this is case number 5 on my list. Let's now come to case number 6. That happened in the year 1953. Then a student named Paul Rubin, he died of cyanide poisoning, and he was found in a hole, I think on an airport somewhere in the USA. And as you can see here, he had a small box on his belly. Well, it was a little smaller than it appears here, of course. But in this box, again, a cryptogram was found. I can show you a scan of the cryptogram as such because it's not available. All I have is a photograph of this sheet that was found in this box. Not all the letters or all the characters can be recognized or can be identified, but at least a few words can be read, like Dulles and Conant. I think these were politicians here in the USA. And apart from this, it's pretty unclear what this means. This cryptogram might have got something to do with the case, with the murder, but it's not even clear if it was a murder. Maybe it was an accident, because cyanide is also used in the industry, so it might happen that somebody gets poisoned by accident, or it was a suicide, nobody really knows. Again, would be very interesting to go into detail about the cryptology of this case, but it's difficult because we don't have the complete scan, and of course time is too short. But what I want to say now, it's an unsolved crime and an unsolved cryptogram. Case number 6. Case number 7. This is a case most of you probably won't know because it's pretty recent, and well, one problem about this case is I can't tell you anything about it because I don't know anything about it. Well, what I can say is that there's a gang and prison code expert named Gary Clivens. He lives in the New York area. I exchanged a few emails with him. Dan, have you ever met him? Oh, okay, so he seems to be a real person because I've never seen a photograph of him, and when I exchanged email with him, I never was really sure who he actually was, but he seems to exist. And when I asked him, well, you know so much about prison codes and gang codes, do you know a code that is unsolved and that is related to an unsolved cryptogram? And he answered yes. There's one example he could send me, and it looked like this. I call it the Lee cryptogram because it consists mostly of L's and E's. Gary Clivens didn't tell me anything about this case. It's classified. My suspicion is that this is a screenshot that was taken during a house search, so there must have been some crime. The police came to the home of the crime suspect and found a PC with a message like this. They took a picture of it and they didn't know what to do with it, and so they sent it to Gary Clivens, but he couldn't make sense of it too. And when I asked him, he provided it to me. I published it on my blog, but my readers couldn't make any sense of it either. So Maybe it was just a cat that ran over the keyboard. You never know, but if you have any idea what this might mean, we could solve a crime, but I can't tell you which one. Maybe it's even solved in the meantime, I have no idea. And now let's get to the last case. That's the so-called Ohio cryptogram. This is about a ticket counter robbery in Lima, Ohio in 1916. So the ticket counter was ran by the Western Ohio Railway, and this ticket counter was robbed. The robber was never arrested, he was never identified, but a few days later, a local newspaper published this article, and in this article, cryptogram is mentioned, and it is said that this cryptogram has a relationship to this robbery, but it doesn't say what kind of relationship. It also gives a key on how to solve this cryptogram, but this key doesn't work. So it's a pretty mysterious case, but all I can say is that the cryptogram looks like this, and in my view it looks like an encrypted telegram. So the robber might have sent an encrypted telegram before he committed the robbery or immediately after it, and by the time it was not unusual to encrypt telegrams, usually with a code book. And if you look at a few words, you see that they are in the clear, so like was, by, their, first, week, with. So the words which don't have a significant meaning obviously are in the clear, and the important words are encrypted. And probably, or that's my suspicion, it was encrypted using a code book. That was the method that was used in the time. And maybe in addition to the code book, an additional encryption was used, which was also quite usual by the time. And my impression is that this cryptogram could be solved if you have the right code book and if you know the method that was used to over-encrypt the coded telegram. But as far as I know, so far nobody has really dug deep enough in this case to solve this cryptogram. Okay, this was case number 8. Let me now draw a conclusion. Well, first of all, unsolved crimes and unsolved cryptograms are an absolutely fascinating topic. If you are a popular scientific writer like me, or if you give any presentations to a layman audience about cryptography and cryptography history, consider this. People will love it, and you can tell them you can solve a crime from your sofa. You just have to solve this encryption, and people will listen. And well, it might happen that they send solutions to you which don't really work, which is not very nice, but at least it proves that people are interested. And I've only been talking about unsolved crimes and unsolved cryptograms. Of course, this is only a small part of this forensic code-breaking history. There's a lot more, and I can tell you, people love that too. So you can also, if you talk to a layman audience, you can also talk about the other stuff I will tell you now, and I'm pretty sure that people will like it. For example, there are encrypted notes about crimes that might never have happened, like the Scorpion cryptogram. It looks pretty much like a message from the Zodiac killer, and the person who wrote it said something like that he was responsible for 23 unsolved crimes. Probably he was lying, probably he was just pretending to have committed these crimes, and it's not known what this encrypted message means. It has never been solved. Would be interesting to know. Probably it will not lead to solving a crime, because probably this has never happened. And Daniel has already mentioned this case. This is about this 13-year-old girl that was killed by a man named Joseph Smith. The Karabusha murder case. This is the cryptogram that was broken by them or by the FBI unit. Of course, this is also a very interesting story. If a case was solved because a cryptogram was broken. And I already mentioned Gary Clivens, the gang code and prison code expert. He wrote a book named Gang Secret Codes Deciphered, a very interesting book, and a couple of examples of gang codes and prison codes and of how he solved them. So again, a very interesting topic, and it's got to do with forensic code breaking. And of course, in recent years, the criminals tended not to use paper and pencil ciphers. Instead, they used encryption programs like TrueCrypt or VeraCrypt or whatever. For example, in Germany, we had the Masked Man case where a child murderer encrypted data with a data encryption program, and the police until today couldn't solve the code. And it will be pretty difficult because modern encryption is almost unbreakable. And this is only one of about 40 cases I found. So the police nowadays has serious trouble to decrypt the data of crime suspects. And of course, this is again a very interesting topic if you talk to laymen. There's much room for further research. So far, I don't know about an overview work about forensic code breaking and its history. So maybe I will one day write a book about it, but so far nothing like this exists. Some cases need further research, and there must be more cases. So if you know a case that fits into my collection of unsolved cases and unsolved cryptograms, I will be very interested about it, because so far I have found only 8 or 9 cases, so I'd like to extend my collection. One problem is much is lost in this field. For example, William Friedman once broke a code, according to this book, of Victor Lustig. Victor Lustig was called the world's greatest imposter, the man who sold the Eiffel Tower to an iron dealer. So really interesting man, really interesting imposter, and William Friedman solved the code of him. That's mentioned in this book, but I have absolutely no information about it, so if you can help me with this, I would be very pleased. And much is classified, so I'm sure Dan could tell us about interesting cases for hours, but I think much of this stuff is classified. Just like the one you see here, this is a cryptogram from a murder case in Italy. Only one page of an encrypted diary has been published, and the rest is classified. And I would love to know more about this diary that was used for a murder case. Okay, this is my last slide. As I said, I presented you 8 cases, and last week I watched a German crime television show, and there I encountered my 9th case. Well, not quite, it's probably not really an encryption, but in this crime watch show, they showed a cell phone with a sticker, and on this sticker, this number is mentioned. Well, these are I think 12 digits, and it's absolutely not known what they mean. Well, it might be a telephone number, but that has been checked. It might be something like a PIN, a secret number, and a PIN unlock key, but the police obviously has checked that also. So it's not really known what it means. If you have an idea what these 12 numbers mean, tell me or tell the German police, and maybe you can help them to solve the crime. And that's it. Thank you.